Welcome to COMETSA Podcasting Network, the podcasting platform of COMETSA Global Online Channels, bringing you another episode by COMETSA Radio Worldwide Podcast. The mind, the journey, the destiny. We apply our mind to the journey that takes us to our destiny. Our shows are based on the principle called the idea. We inform and entertain. We develop and educate. We empower and support. We associate and network. That is the idea. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the episode. This is the Entrepreneurship Development INDABA, our monthly conversation on entrepreneurship. On this week of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, we have a special show for you, and we are going to be hosting very interesting guests from the other side of the Atlantic. Our colleague Genae Young and is hosting her guest, Michelle. I will also be welcoming our regular entrepreneurs that host or co-host this show with me. And there will be the special guests of Genae and Michelle. I hope you are celebrating the Global Entrepreneurship Week, wherever you are. This evening in South Africa, this morning in the US, it might be afternoon somewhere, wherever you are. My name is Sam Zima. Mine today is really to hand over to our host, Genae, to start the show. Over to you, Genae.
Good day, everybody. Thank you, Sam, for the warm introduction. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. My name is Genae Young, and I'm so glad to be with you today for Global Entrepreneurship Week. Thanks for joining the COMETSA Podcasting Network, where today we will be speaking to Michelle Snow. So I just wanted to make sure that we have all of our guests live. And Michelle, are you here? Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's really great to be a part of the COMETSA Podcasting Network, to be talking about entrepreneurship. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce our guest. But as a DJ and podcaster of the COMETSA Network, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Genae Young, and I sit over in New Jersey in the U.S. I have a company as an entrepreneur called One Extraordinary Life based in New Jersey, and I'm focused on organization development, human resources, and talent development. I am an organization development practitioner, and one of our principles is, as an organization development practitioner, is to really be focused on making sure that people get information that they need. So when organization development started, it was really about making sure that information and resources are available to people at large so that they can grow as much as they can in their own lives, so that they have access to improve not only themselves, but the communities that they live in and organizations that they participate in. So I'm really glad to be a part of this and be able to have an incredible entrepreneur that I'm so grateful to work closely with here in the States. And her name is Michelle Snow. So just to tell you a little bit about her organization, you can find her online at growwithsnow.com. But Michelle has been an entrepreneur since 2013, and she's known as the business coach, and she makes incredible connections. She's a philanthropist, an award winning coach. She's the president and executive consultant of multiple companies and a nonprofit called Grow Together the Snow Foundation. She actually piloted her business in 2010 and really started to get started around 2013. So she was focused initially on adult mentoring and professional and development leadership. And I won't give away all of the wonderful things that she's doing. We'll allow that to unfold throughout our conversation today. But Grow with Snow has stretched its borders. We're talking internationally right now in Global Entrepreneur Week. But she's an ambassador and expert in business coaching for large and small companies, for schools, colleges, and university. She's recognized by Forbes, the Philadelphia City Council, the Philadelphia Department of Commerce, and she's also endorsed by Scoop USA and Fun Times Magazine. And she's recognized by Philadelphia Tribune and the Philadelphia Daily News and Inquirer and Philadelphia magazines. She is a go-to guru when it comes to entrepreneurship. So I'm really grateful to have her here with you today. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Michelle Snow. Michelle, thank you for joining us today.
Good day, Miss Genae. Thank you so much, Sam. This has been the highlight of November, getting a chance to speak to my global brothers and sisters, not only locally right here in the USA, but to speak and connect with you across and throughout the diaspora. It is such an honor. I am so glad that this community is finding the value in helping your audience and your community to find entrepreneurial and business support and tips. And Genae and Sam, I am here for it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you again for the opportunity. So, as I joined the COMETSA podcasting network back in 2020 and 2021, and it's continuously grown with listenership across the world. So, if you're tuning in from the U.S., from South Africa, or across the world, we welcome you. And to talk a little bit about how we unfold our conversations, we speak in the Lakota methodology, and so pardon me if my English tongue doesn't pronounce the word exactly as it would if I were in the South African tongue. But the Lakota methodology is really about allowing our guests to really take the conversation and we listen. It's not as much of an interview, but a conversation to allow a story to unfold, for us to get to know you and to be able to understand tips and tools that you would have for our listening audience that they can take back and implement into their lives. So as we spend time together over the next about 2-hour period, we'll just unfold our story and have a conversation. So nestle in, make sure you're in a great spot. If you like, grab a journal or a notebook so you can jot down some gems and get some information. Or if you have some questions, you can join. You can look at Genae Young online, or Michelle Snow online on LinkedIn, or Sam Sema on LinkedIn to get the link to the show. You can join the show as the general public, and you can drop questions in the chat if you have any questions for our guest today. But let's just jump into some of our conversation. So, entrepreneurship, it is not a journey for the faint of heart. Michelle, as I opened up the conversation and talked about you piloting in your early entrepreneurship career in 2010, we all know that sometimes the present state that we live in has started maybe even way before then. So can you tell me, what about your life would inspire you towards this, and what has been your journey? How did you get towards becoming Michelle Snow, the entrepreneur?
Well, I'm pausing to gather my thoughts because so much is racing through my mind, right? And so let me just start by saying I am an only child. And there are some only children that become introverts because they didn't have an opportunity to learn how to play with other people because they spend so much time alone. I am the complete opposite of that. I am the absolute complete turnaround from that. So I had so much opportunity as a young person growing up to be to use my voice and to be seen and to be heard and to be applauded and to be groomed and to be pushed, and to not to be silenced, and in that, everyone that I supported or celebrated, I had a chance to really see in real time, even from my childhood, how impactful what I had to say could help people. And of course, that goes all the way back to growing up in church, having a pastor, having a God like family around me. So, all of those things, from growing up in church, supporting ministry, outreach, being an only child that was pushed to celebrate and support people, wanting to see people find their creative path and niche, and just to be a part of turning imagination and vision into reality. It was an absolute recipe to be a coach years later. And of course, no one knew what that was, because many of you understand that coaching is something that became popular years, more in the more recent years. It wasn't a thing when I was a little girl, right? And for those of you who are in the United States, if you weren't a lawyer or doctor or school teacher or secretary, right? We didn't have a lot of aspiration to become something except for a rapper or an athlete. So there was no model, Genae, right? There was no model for what we do, but God, in his infinite wisdom, had always been preparing me for such a time as this. And so ultimately, to answer your question, which was, how did I get on this entrepreneurial journey, which was just a recipe of family engagement, certainly my church experience. And here we are where I'm now using and pulling together all of those experiences to now serve God's people all over the world.
And that's amazing, Michelle. Like that journey early on, understanding that you felt called towards being able to help people and developing along the way what that would look like in action and how you would pull that together, that it would look like entrepreneurship. And it reminds me of, maybe it gives a little bit of a backstory about your personal mantra. I know your personal mantra, but can we hear you say it in your voice, and why that is your personal mantra? The living. I'll let you say your personal mantra.
Well, living epistles grow together, right? That's
Yes,
probably what you were going for,
that's
right?
it. Yep.
Living epistles grow together. I mean, we are life personified. We are literally tablets of life walking among people, and whether we're speaking or silent, we're always telling a story. We're always sending out um enthusiasm or hope or information, no matter what we're doing, right? Whether we're laughing with friends, whether we're teaching in front of a classroom, whether we're attending a workshop, there's something about us, as individuals, that we are always writing a story for other people. And so what better way to live out loud than to grow together with your peers and community? I mean, if we as a people can collectively and consistently break the stigma that we don't stick together, it would be awesome. Now, I understand that there are some cultural differences from country to country, and it's not the truth that Black people, no matter what the culture is, don't stick together. That is not true, because all of us can look into our communities, no matter where you are, whether you're in Europe or Africa or America, wherever we are, we can look and find people who are growing together. The challenge is that there are so many people in our community that don't always hold true to that sentiment. And some of it is due to oppression. Some of it is due to frustration. Some of it is due to worry and fear. So it is my desire that in just my small space, that whoever is surrounding me, that as living epistles, we collectively desire that when I grow, you grow. When you grow, I grow. It means something that we both get there together.
That is an amazing way of being able to see it collectively as, worldwide, as a community, as we continue to grow together and make our lives better. To know that we have support and we share information is an amazing thing. And even to turn our attention and be able to focus on the Creator, on God, as we're able to do that, to just edify as we move through, is a wonderful thing. And, I think many of us within this community, whether, for some people, God looks different, and it might be a different experience. But I know, many of us throughout, within the Michelle Snow Network, with One Extraordinary Life New Jersey, within COMETSA, like in those communities, do have a God-centered focus. And it's incredible to be able to share those principles and be able to grow together, as you say. Michelle, tell us about what your school journey might have been like early on, growing up in Philadelphia. What kind of assignments or things were you attuned to? What kind of things did you like to do when you were younger?
So as a child, I was a student that wouldn't necessarily be identified as a good student or a bad student. I was always the student that just enjoyed what I enjoyed, right? If I wanted to excel, I did. If I didn't want to excel, guess what? I didn't, right? There were some students that could say, oh, I was great in math, or I was great in reading. I was great in whatever I chose to do. What called me the most was social engagement, social activities. So I was one of the, Genae, it's so funny that I'm reflecting on my childhood experience as you asked me this question, and I'm remembering all of the grounds that I was breaking even as a child in high school. No, let's go back to those early years, early education, maybe middle school. I was one of the first ever creators to create an evening fashion show
Oh,
where the kids and the parents came out, and we had this awesome fashion show. I remember being a coordinator for a gymnastics tournament, but I couldn't even do a rollover, right? Let alone the backflips and all the other cool stuff the kids were doing. But I was curating these activities. I was a part of showcasing other children's genius and greatness. And I did that all the way through high school, and honestly, and it wasn't until this moment that I even realized that this leadership role of helping people to fulfill their best selves literally did start in my childhood days. And of course, that was always intertwined with Sunday school, right? You said my school experience. So between Sunday school and my place of worship and elementary school, that was where I found my joy and my passion, and working even as an assistant to the arts teachers and whatnot. But it's so funny, Genae, that people appreciated it, but it's hard to fully appreciate something you don't understand.
right.
Right? Like it's like the what is it factor. Like I can see the value, but what the heck is that?
Right. Right.
Right? If you had told me when I was 10, 11, 12, or even 15 years old that people wouldn't maybe figure out what this is for 20 or 30 more years, I would have quit. So thank
Right.
God it wasn't articulated to me because it took time. It took time. But yeah, as a child, I grew up in a very urban neighborhood. If any of you are watching the news from different countries or even in the United States, you know that America and our urban populations and our urban cities is facing a lot of trauma, a lot of danger. And so while I did grow up in what people identify as the hood, it was nothing like it is today, right? Like today we go outside and you hear every night gunshots, 6 gunshots, 12 people shot, 5 people shot, 1 person stabbed, somebody attempted abduction. Back then there was violence and crime, but even if you lived in a dangerous neighborhood, you did not feel the danger like some cities do today. And so with that, all of that was the making, right? All of that was the making to what you see today, having had real experience with people, Genae, who were trying to find their one extraordinary life, right? And in the midst of poverty, in the midst of just 20 years coming out of segregation, like that we our parents saw and were a big part of segregation. So coming out of that era and the projects, for those of you who don't know what projects are, those are low income housing units. And so living in that era, all of it was the making of how do I one day be a part of what literally makes people's lives better.
Right. Absolutely. And you've described there, what it was like to grow up in an urban neighborhood, in the 80s, the 90s, what that time frame was like, and such a big contrast to what it is today. I mean, you're right. It didn't feel as palpable. It was there, but it didn't feel as palpable as it is today. Like when you turn on the news, there's so much it just feels so much more close, and I don't know, what to attribute that to. Is it social media? Things are just open. Everyone has a phone and a camera. Things are captured. You can share it in real time. Or, just rising incivility. Don't know what that is, but understanding that, even then, things still existed, the same sort of elements were there, and wanting to be able to find a way that people, Michelle, would be able to grow together and would be able to live their best lives and tap into what's inside of them that's incredible, that they would be able to live out in the world was, it's a common theme of people who want to move to the next level and continue to help other people grow. That definitely felt like a part of the scene then. What do you feel like you attribute that to? Like what the change is now that it feels so much more palpable, some of the things that were around. And I want to make a comment to folks that might be listening there, when you referenced what the projects were, it was famously depicted in a sitcom that came out in the 1970s here called Good Times. And I don't know if that runs internationally or not, but it's a sitcom. So, it kind of tries to depict what that life might have been like. And that was in the 1970s. So just to give you a time frame concept, these things that we're talking about have always been around in urban areas, but for whatever reason, more now feels a little more palpable, and still having that hope and still having that determination to grow and to be your best is still things that people strive for today. But Michelle, what do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I like how this conversation is taking a turn because while it is important that when you talk to influencers and hear their stories, that it ties in so that people can identify with it and experience it in real time. And so the question is, well, what's different now? There's always been violence. There's always been trauma in our communities in our new modern day times. But why is it so ignited now? And this is a conversation that I have with my family all the time. Like, what do I believe was one of the big nuggets for this erratic shift. Crime was organized, right? I mean, literally, crime was organized. Even if you look at white communities who ran the mafia and ran gangs through their community, there was a boss who led, and that people either honored or feared. Either which way, they followed systems, they followed rules. Why? Because even though it was violent, even though it was negative, even though it was illegal, everyone had a goal to grow together, right? Right? They had a goal to grow together to get to an ultimate goal. And that ultimate goal was wealth, sustainability, financial freedom, access, legacy, right? And so, with the ultimate goal and everybody agreeing to that, the actions, even if they were negative or illegal, were all based around what is this act for? Is it going to get us closer to our promise, or is it going to cause unnecessary attention or harm? And so, therefore, even in the illegal communities like the mafia, the white mafia, or in the 80s and early 90s, we had the black mafia. We had the gangs that we were dealing with. All of them had territorial understanding. One, you don't mess with the church because we believe that God is sovereign despite our bad behaviors, right? Even criminals and people who were not living a righteous life understood that we should fear God and that we should tithe. I mean, people know that the Catholic Church received a lot of income from the mafia because they were looking to pay for a path to heaven, right? Nowadays, fast forward, where the old days they had structure, they had rules, they had guidance, they had order, and they had clear, definitive targets. Fast forward, let's say 60 years later, we now have a culture community where the end result is not necessarily growing together and promise and financial freedom. The end result could be, what kind of fame can I get by creating or engaging in this heinous act? If I can record this heinous act of this bad behavior, then maybe I'll be famous for a day or a week. Maybe I'll be famous for a month. Maybe I'll get 1 million views on my social media. And so when you have distorted ultimate goals, then you create a lot of radical one-off individuals who will break systems and rules and create chaos. And with chaos comes what we now are facing every day in the media, where a little girl is standing next to a parent but gets shot because someone saw someone in the grocery store who said something mean to them on social media. And by any means necessary, they are going to use this moment in front of them without any caution, without any forethought, without any group economics, and have this moment. So I'll wrap this answer up by saying to you, Genae, that people are not necessarily looking for their one extraordinary life. They're looking for fame. God is removed. Quite frankly, while I respect people who choose to be agnostic because it's your right to believe what you desire, in my experience, it is extremely helpful to have an honor for a higher power, to have a creator, a spiritual creator that can give you divine guidance and direction and preparation. And not having that, where people are looking to themselves only. You're looking to your flesh and to your current circumstances for direction. The Bible tells us that the heart is deceitfully evil. Who can know it?
Right.
So who's to say what you will conjure up being on this planet with all of this violence? So I don't want to belabor the point, because clearly you just hit a passion button, Genae. But I do want to say, and the answer to that is that there isn't group economics, there isn't a leadership, a hierarchy, and ultimately losing faith and an honor for a higher power and a creator, I believe, is a significant part of why times have shifted.
Oh, that is a real profound answer, just to think about, the changes and how things have been organized over the last 60 years. These elements and violence and crime have always existed throughout communities. But you make a point that is rarely heard or rarely discussed, and how things have changed and why it feels so much more palpable or maybe out of control. There's a lot of incivility and, social media playing a part. If someone said something mean, I think even in those years, you had to have a forum to know how people felt. And now, people can, have no filter, get up in the morning and, say how they feel, about someone or whatever. And that definitely has impact. It's really a profound way of being able to see it. I think those are powerful points. So for the 10-year-old who may hear your voice, the 8-year-old who's living in, South Philly, South side of Chicago, South Africa, wherever, sunny Southern California, wherever we are. I mean, we are in an era where things are just different. But, as many of those elements prevail, there's still people who want to do well. And we know we have to have contributors and people who want to do the best that they can. So for those who are listening and that they may be in those places, how do they continue to grow? What would you say to someone who's coming up now? They live in a different reality than we did in the 80s and 90s, coming up in those environments. What would you say to them?
Well, I definitely want to get into that. I want to check in with Sam to be sure that we're not missing any comments or quotes that people may be sharing online. Sam, please let us know if we're missing anything that anybody wants us to address as we're having this conversation.
So far, we're just absorbing the conversation, and thanks for such energetic start. I just want to acknowledge my two colleagues, two entrepreneurs that are with us in the studio, is Maynard and Rabula. So I hope they are following, and they just want to say hi to you. But they are with us in the studio. Whenever you are ready to ask for our reflection, it will be myself and them. And then, of course, I'm watching the chat boxes. People are acknowledging and liking your show. So far, so good.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Genae. So you want to talk about what advice do I give people today? Let me just make sure I understand the question.
Sure, I do. And thank you to colleagues Maynard and Rapula for joining the chat, and others who are liking the show and on the show. Definitely see your activity. So thank you for being with us and supporting us today. There's always that desire to grow up and contribute, to want to to see what's happening in and around you and wanting to be able to affect change positively. So for a young person who may be, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, with they want to become entrepreneurs, they are growing up in their current environment, which will one day be the past for them. Like, those times that we were talking about were the past for us. What would you say to those folks that would be listening? What would you say to them? What kind of advice would you give to them as a young budding entrepreneur or someone who is coming up in those environments and wanting to succeed?
I'm really struggling with that, because the future of someone who is a young person today who will in one day be the 40-year-old or the 60-year-old self, Genae, it's going to look very different. It's not going to look like what we see life like. I mean, I'm just thinking back, Genae, do you remember, and to all of the listeners out here, no matter where you are, you likely remember a time where we wrote letters to people, right? No, not email, Genae, not email, Sam, right?
Right.
We pulled out something called paper.
Right.
and and we got a writing device that wasn't a device, right?
Right.
It was a good old
Absolutely, I
sharpened
remember.
pencil.
Right.
And we were excited to get a ballpoint pen or a fine point pen,
Right.
right? This was communication. When we desired to check on our money, we had to get dressed up and stand in a physical line and ask a person what's in this building that belongs to me. Um, and now you can literally put money in a bank on a phone. I mean,
Right.
who,
Right.
what?
Right.
You could not have told me as a 10-year-old girl that my phone, which had buttons that made noise, and you had to literally hang it up and you could hear the hang up, that one day that thing would be something that I could see on and talk on, and it was like it would become a calculator, and it would be
Right.
it would become a bank.
Right.
I mean, unfathomable.
Right.
And so this new generation, what we now is blowing our minds 40 years later. I can't even imagine the things that they will do that will be so different. I would imagine that they will have to be able to one day remember a thing. You say something?
Oh, no. I'm listening.
That I would imagine, Genae, that one day they will have to remember a thing called critical thinking.
Oh.
I think that terms like critical thinking and empathy and compassion and sensitivity may be words that won't be able to immediately be identified. I think that people will have to stop and research and Google what is empathy, what is compassion, what is sincerity. I think that those will be terms that will be hard to find in 30 or 40 years. And so if a young person today can write that on their heart, so that one day when they are speaking publicly on devices and through virtual situations or marches or bands, they can remember these words like empathy, compassion, and love and sincerity, and say, is any of what I'm doing laced in that? Is it dripped in that? How far has my new generation, whatever it's going to be called in 30 or 40 years, because it won't be Generation Z, it'll be something else.
Right.
Like whatever it's going to be called, is that something that we need to call forth again? The and keep in mind that every generation repeats itself.
Right.
So even though it may not be popular one day, can you go back to an older generation and say, oh, you know what? They used to talk about this thing called compassion. Maybe we should think about that. Well, what's that? What is compassion? Well,
Right.
it's when you care about the needs and the concerns that help other people. Oh, really? Other people?
Right.
And so I'm being facetious and I'm being funny, Sam and Genae, but I'm being very sincere because we're seeing in real time. We're seeing in real time that those interpersonal skills are fleeting. And so, Sam, I don't know if this came out in South.
Yeah, this is you're touching on very interesting perspectives here. But I like what the colleague Andre Young has posted. I hope you see the chat box. He's
Yes.
mentioned three. He calls them the three big traditional African principles that we grew up knowing in the 70s and 80s. The first one is he says that we had a communal system where you belonged to this neighborhood and had to account to neighbors for the behavior you displayed. That is the one thing. And the second point was you were acknowledged as being of value. In South Africa is the Ubuntu concept, which taught us that you must become your highest potential and be responsible for your conduct in community. And lastly, the third one is decision-making was indeed based on consultation, consensus, and conversation with seniors and elders. Wow. I don't know what's your view there. That's something similar you're touching on. And then, of course, you then extrapolate into the future. You are saying what we see now, having moved away from those three examples that Andre is sharing, we see that in the future, what we are lamenting about today will not even be the point of discussion. I hear you saying that, Michelle.
Yes, things are going to continue to evolve. I appreciate everyone who's sharing in the comments, and I'm so glad that our collective conversations are touching your heart, because if you can remember it and identify with it, then we can all learn from it and grow from it. Let me just share one example. This happened recently. So Sam, I don't know if this was in the news in your country, but in the last maybe 72 hours or 3 business days or so, a grandmother, Genae, I don't know if you caught this story, went to pick up her child from school. I'm imagining this was a younger child, not a baby or a toddler, maybe middle school, possibly early high school. I'm not sure. And they went to go pick up their child from school, a grandmother. And the end of the story is that the grandmother's, I'm not laughing because this is funny. I'm laughing because I don't know how to even express what I'm about to say here. The grandmother stabbed a student and was maced in the process. So you have to think for a second, what in the world happened from grandmom, Nana, picking up their grandchild from school to her stabbing a student, right? Like, how does that happen in real time? And so as they back the story up and unfolded for us, a student allegedly bumped Nana or did something in the physical that was inappropriate. And somehow the grandmother and the student got into a verbal altercation that turned into this violent physical act. And I'm sharing this, pardon me. I'm sharing this example because Sam and Genae, we can remember being children in school. And no matter what situation we were in, we can't even fathom fighting someone's grandmother under any circumstances, right?
Right.
Sam, can you, I mean, maybe it's different in South Africa, but can you imagine that?
It's unfathomable.
I mean, just agreeing with the point raised by Andre. I grew up in a village where we call ourselves, and I still call myself as such today, the child of the village. Every elderly person in the village is my parent. And I do anything that is untoward, I will be punished, and I won't even run home, because if I run home and I tell them that somebody punished me, they will punish me even further, because they believe that no elder will punish me for no apparent reason, right? So that was just those days, and I'm happy we are using this parallel because we are projecting to establish what will the situation be, how much shifting will the ground have done in the future, and now what you are saying is happening today, and is unimaginable a year ago.
And
I don't know
so,
whether my colleague Rabula and Maynard, who are with us in the studio, wants to interject there, but I mean, I don't want to occupy the space alone. I'm sure they can relate to some of the points you are raising.
sure, are they joining in?
Oh, yes.
Here,
They are in
they're
the
here.
Good
studio.
evening, colleagues. Maynard here from Mysela Corporate Branding. Hi, Genae. Hi, Michelle. Hi,
Hi.
Sam. And everyone. Like the story that you are narrating, Michelle, is actually funny as you started for sure. It's actually very funny. I mean, like, how will the whole grandmother step a child? It goes back to what Prasem was saying that, like, in those olden days, you wouldn't even exchange words with an elder. To start with, you wouldn't even exchange words with an elder person. So really, it's actually very fun until we find out actually what actually transpired along the whole process. But nevertheless, guys, the show has been very quite interesting from the beginning. We've been following, but we all together in the studio.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I wanted to with Andre's point when Andre said in the chat, growing up in the 70s and 80s, and he talked about that first principle, the communal system, where you belong to the neighborhood and had to account to your neighbors for the behavior that you displayed. I would say that was the same here. Neighbors were a little more involved in looking after children. You could go to a neighbor's house after school. It just seems as if as time has marched on, people stay a little bit more to themselves. So I think that's just a little bit of the modern era, that people probably stay a little bit more to themselves, but it was a little more communal probably during those times. And, to Michelle's point, the grandmom could be, Joe's grandmom, but she was kind of like everybody's grandmom, and nobody would think of being disrespectful. If someone's grandmom came to the school, everyone was polite and said hello. So it does, just speak to the point of things in this modern era, just can be just sensational and different for whatever reason. And it's a lot that people have to overcome, young folks have to overcome. But to Michelle, your earlier point about all of the technology that people have available to them and being able to do critical thinking and those who are embracing empathy and able to embrace caring and love and being able to grow up with all of these tips and tools at their fingertips. Kids in school today might, they're learning. And, in our day, if you missed a day of school, it was out of sight, out of mind. It was in the textbook. If you missed it, you missed it. Today, you can go back into your Google Classroom, or, get a resource off of YouTube. They have so many more resources than we did. They're able to maybe shape the future a little bit more. So when you're working with high schoolers and you're working with young folks in colleges and university, do you see them utilizing the tips and tools a little bit more? They're using technology differently. We didn't have Google back in the day. Are they using those things to their advantages, and what kind of tools should they be focused on using as they're moving forward?
Well, I like to answer this in two parts. One, to address your question directly. This is the first time ever in civilian life that today's youngest generation has access to all data of all time. No generation like today's generation of young students have ever had so much information to pull from for success and to access for success. The beauty in that is no matter what they want to do, even if it's unique, there is some information that they can apply it to. No generation has been able to do that. So one part is there is help for these students like never before. There is self-education like never before. They don't have to be ostracized and to fight for insight like my parents did or some others' great parents did. They can just get access to what the old people used to say, the internet, and figure it out. The challenge with having access to so much value is that it can be taken for granted and used misappropriately. So it's like any kind of abundance. When all you know is abundance, you don't understand scarcity. Therefore, you may mistreat or misappropriate the abundance. And so while there's so much information to be successful and good, that people may not be leaning on it appropriately. So I do think that the younger generation gets technology. Like they're like, no matter what it is, why are you wasting time grappling with trying to figure it out? Just Google it.
Right.
Right? They don't, what are we trying to figure this out for? Just go on the internet, go on the web, type it in, and there's your answer. The challenge in that is the ability to be able to have retention. So again, we're talking about what advice will we have for younger people? What do they have access to? How are they using it? So these skills that I'm talking about today will one day be important: love, compassion, honesty, authenticity, now retention. Because a younger person will think, why do I have to remember something? Why do I even have to learn? Because if I forget it or don't know it, I'll just type it in my phone.
Right.
Now that's true. That is very true. Like, why should I remember a phone number? That's stupid. I can use my brain power for something else. I don't need to remember anything. What's the consequence to that? If your brain isn't trained to learn and retain and to process and to build, what are we doing, Sam? What are we doing, everybody in the studio? We are creating a less smart generation of students, of people. We are creating generations of really dumb people because they have simplified everything that I don't have to know, I don't have to retain, I don't have to grow because my device is smart for me. Until these devices backfire, because there's always good and evil present in everything. So what's being put in these devices to tell you what you should do and act for? So we lose the art of critical thinking, of retention, of learning and processing. Once again, back to what we are creating, God only knows. So the other part that I want to have the older generation think about is humans are literally evolving into some new creature, right? And let me just keep it on the planet, Genae, because you know I'm about to just go off here. But stick with me, everybody. I promise you, this ride is gonna bless your life. Genae, humans are changing. Did you hear me, Genae? I want to make sure that you listen.
I'm listening.
All right. The human race is evolving into something that we only read about in comic books or saw in futuristic movies. There is no longer just male and female. There's no longer gay, straight, or not, right? That's not the thing anymore alone. We're getting ready to move into a generation of artificial intelligence or human, because now we're meeting a class of people where they don't identify as anything, right? Like I got an email literally from someone I'm doing business with. And when you ask this person what's their pronoun, their response was anything you like, as long as it's polite. Now, this is not a critique or judgment. That's not what this conversation is. This conversation is awareness as we speak to our future selves in 40 or 60 years. Me 40 years ago, having to not identify with any kind of I'm sorry, I was getting some text messages and I wanted to just make sure that it didn't reflect on this call. Having a conversation where it didn't reflect on any kind of gender, it's going to be important to how we all function and operate. I see you, Genae. We're going to transition of how we function and operate. Once again, that's something that no one can prepare you for. And so now the next generation is going to have to think about in their workplace, right? Get back into for their workplace and for their businesses of how to address customers, of how to address colleagues and clients. All of those things are new futuristic conversations, Genae, right? Because I want to make sure that we stay on task here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying what's going to be different for this new generation: gender identification, how you address people. Will they be fully and completely human or not? Because now this next generation, these rich people, Genae, and I'm going to stop here, they're literally buying new parts to become smarter in business, to be more successful, right? So I had to take this conversation way out because we're talking about, well, what do I say to my future self? It would be unfair to give advice to this next generation and not be thoughtful about what life will look like in 30, 40, or even 50 years.
So I hear you, and there's so much that's changing with technology, how we greet ourselves, how we connect with others. I mean, to your earlier point of being able to connect across countries and connect in the way that we do. I mean, it's a fantastic time that we live in a different time. It's a lot to be able to navigate through and to find your way through. And there's a lot of power in having access and technology. People are building incredible things with technology, connecting in ways that they haven't. My own children, they have friends that, they may not have seen in a while because they moved away, but, it's like, oh, I just, talk to them, and it's not on the phone, but, being able to see them through video chat and being able to, build, communities in their video games. It's just, we have the metaverse. There's so many different ways that business will look different in the future and how we engage virtually. It's a time to be very aware of our critical thinking, to be aware of our principles, our values, our beliefs, and how we're able to engage. So it's an exciting time. It's something really to pay attention to. So I would say for those, I will ask for those who want to be in commerce, those who are up and coming entrepreneurs, those who are looking to organize their businesses. It's going to look very different. Country to country, like organizing your business to be able to want to organize your business. Here we have 501c3 LLCs, and there's in South Africa, they have different ways of organizing their business. But how would you advise someone who might be working in a corporate setting now? So, you and I have both been there. A lot of people listening maybe have been there, and they're interested in the entrepreneurial journey. They may not have a big endowment, a trust fund, or, people who have been, they may not be second generation or third generation entrepreneurs, but maybe first generation entrepreneurs. And they have a solution. They want to start a market, a restaurant. They want to do work within an organization. How would you advise someone around the transition from working in an organization today to maybe wanting to become an entrepreneur, given that's been a journey before? How would you advise that person doing that now in 2022?
So the first thing is to look before you leap. I wish I could say that I created that quote, but I didn't. A very wise person said, look before you leap. There is a new trend, Genae, of the whole quiet quitting. I'm firing my boss. Have you heard these terms?
Yes, definitely have heard them, especially during the pandemic. The quiet quitting. Yes, definitely. And those are trending on Google and also in LinkedIn.
Okay. And influencers have made terms like firing my boss and quiet quitting something that is popular or sexy. I started answering this question by look before you leap. Once you decide that you have the wherewithal, the courage, the tenacity, and the faith to bring something to light from scratch that you're responsible for, it's emphatically important that you do your research. Unless life has thrown you a curveball and you have no choice but to get into entrepreneurship, look first, do assessments, research, save, test the culture out that you're looking to serve, get feedback and pilots from what the experience was like serving that customer audience, evaluate it, determine whether or not it can be repeated, and can it be expanded? Can it be times 1,000? Can it be times 10,000? Can it be times 1,000,000? Was it a one-off thing? All of those pre-planning steps are going to be vital for your success coming from a job to business. Genae, I'm finding that younger generations, and I'm not necessarily talking about children, I'm talking about millennials who are in their 30s, maybe a little bit of late 20s. They're like 28 to maybe 40, 41, 42. That's the millennial generation. Generation Z, they are maybe 24 to teenagers, somewhere around that break. I'm finding that because they have seen so much sensationalism in marketing and information about people's success stories, that this thing called research and development evaluation is no longer a part of their process. Now, here's what's so great about that. What's good about that, Genae, is that we're building a generation of young people that are courageous and willing to take risk on themselves, something my generation and older didn't see as dominantly. However, the other flip side to that is they are finding themselves in really deplorable situations in business. They are finding themselves opening businesses that are outrageously wrong for them. And so let me make this plain. There was a young woman who was wildly successful in home care, who heard that childcare was lucrative. Notice I said heard.
Right.
I didn't say researched.
Right.
And based off of what she heard and saw on YouTube or friends or influencers, she invested $50,000 into building a childcare business, only to find out that it was the mistake of her life. That it was a business that didn't fit her personality, community, nothing. It was just a really bad business for her to build. This is $50,000 later.
Right.
Yeah. So research development and giving yourself some time within reason, I think, is one of the first things that people need to learn when leaving their jobs to build a business.
That's a really great point, because, a lot of times, you may follow the it sounds like it's lucrative. It sounds like it's something that would make great money, but is that something that you really want to do, or is it, or something you have a talent to do, or something you have a passion for? Now, I will tell you, through COMETSA, there is an Entrepreneurship INDABA, which is a framework, and there are several components to the framework, about nine components to the framework, actually. One of them being the purpose of your enterprise. Like, what is the reason for it to exist? What purpose will it serve? What is that process? How would you suggest somebody really evaluate going through the process of determining the purpose for their enterprise, the vision for their enterprise, and the mission of their enterprise? And here in the States, in South Africa, and through worldwide, if you're establishing a business, if you wanted to go to an institution for funding, or you want to express what that is, create a website, create marketing around it, you have to have those three things evaluated. And sometimes people have a hard time figuring out how to go about that process. How would you advise someone who is establishing a business and really wanting to, sidestep making that kind of mistake, doing something that seems like it might be lucrative, but that's not necessarily their passion, their mission, their vision? How would someone go about establishing that?
I mean, it does go back to what I just said about the research and development. And the other part is, what kind of investments are you willing to make? And what are you willing to lose? And what are you willing to sacrifice for your greater goal? One is, my generation of women, especially Black American women, we thrived on advising people in the teens, right? The 20 teens, before the pandemic, to go after your passion. Right. Whatever your heart desires to do, go do that. Do what your passion tells you. If you live and do something that you love, you never work a day in your life. Have you ever heard any women?
It's a very popular saying. That's a lot of what people say when you're going into the entrepreneurial space.
So the challenge with that 10 years later is that there were two sides to that story that my sisters did not know to teach us. It is an absolutely beautiful thing when you can serve people doing what you love to do and make money from it. I think it's priceless. It might be as beautiful as maybe raising children. It's so beautiful. What I've learned in hindsight in these 2020s is that that's not the only answer to starting a business. It's only one little teeny fragment, because ultimately, when you start a business, you create it because you're looking to generate money. You're looking to generate wealth and income. It's not a hobby.
Right.
Right. It's not necessarily what people may identify as their ministry. Is their ministry in it? Is a hobby inside of it? Sure. You want to have something that you can play and have fun with, but it's not necessary. It is emphatically not necessary to love what you do in order to be successful. And I like to celebrate our Asian community in the United States as an example. I think that our Asian sisters and brothers in the United States do a really good job of not being concerned with passion, but being very concerned with what do consumers need that our community have or have access to. And one of those answers to that question is hair, beauty,
Mm-hmm.
laundry, and food.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody excited about washing clothes. Do you know
Right.
somebody who enjoys like that's just like their passion or their thing?
Right. Not many people.
Yeah, I literally don't know anybody who finds extreme joy in washing clothes. But our Asian brothers and sisters saw that people have dirty clothes in the United States, that they either cannot wash themselves due to lack of appliances, or they don't have time to wash themselves.
Everyone's busy working, taking care of folks.
So what was their answer? Their answer was, since this is a need from a sustainable, locked-in audience, let's fulfill that need.
Mhm.
And so what happened in the United States in the 2000s is that they created some of the most phenomenal laundromats ever. Massage chairs, coffee, big screen TVs, great lighting, and a digital card access. And so I'm harping on this because we were told just do what you're passionate about,
Right.
but we missed out.
Michelle, can I be passionate about doing exactly that? About helping people who can't help themselves. And by being that passionate in doing that, I'm making my money, but I'm also fulfilled by me helping somebody who couldn't have helped themselves.
That's good. I like that, Sam. That's a good interjection.
Because if the helping of somebody it doesn't concern me, I'm as good as not being passionate about what my business stands for. But by just being passionate for the sake of being passionate without having an ultimate outcome like making money, I don't think it's sustainable. And that's what I hear you say as well.
Absolutely. But I do also want to, I mean, Sam, that was very brilliantly stated, and I'm glad that you interjected and said that. But I'm also, to Genae's point about what advice do you give people who are starting their business. While passion is one avenue, it's not the only avenue. And quite frankly, I know plenty of people who do businesses that they really just don't like. Right? They really just don't like, but they know how to run their business and use it to generate income. Now, back to the finding joy in it. They may say, I can't stand being a fisherman, but fisherman helps me to fulfill my other dreams, like build wells in Africa to help children that don't have running water. So I'll do this thing over here that doesn't bring me joy because I can use the resources from it to make me happy in other complete different ways. Sam, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If I could say, I wonder if, because I'm taking away from this, and Michelle, my notes on this, and I'm taking away, you could do something that might seem like the monotonous chore, right? So it may be like the laundry, or something that might be routine and it may feel monotonous, that doesn't necessarily feel like a passion, but you might be able to draw passion that you're funding other passion projects. Or if you feel like most people who are entrepreneurs want to be helpers. So, somehow I want to get into business to help others. So even if you're doing something that may not be passionate about doing the chore, passionate about doing the laundry, or whatever it is, it's that I know that I'm helping the busy person who might not have time, or someone who may not have access to the resource, or someone who might be caregiving, or whatever it is. I'm going to make their day easier so I can feel passionate about something that might seem like a chore to someone else, and I might feel good about that.
So what I'll say to that is, I believe that we're all in agreement that while there are many roads to the end result, find your own joy in it. Find your own joy in it. Even if it's something that you personally are not crazy about, have an ultimate goal that it brings joy back to you. Why is this important? Why does joy have to be a part of the process? Why does fulfillment have to be a part of the process? Why can't money just be the end of the process? One, money is fleeting. It changes daily. Its value goes up and down. Money isn't sustainable alone. So, in your process of building and creating business and entrepreneurship and serving and being profitable, finding the joy helps you to have ultimately a healthy life, because the people who we have data from that focus strictly on just a payday and nothing else, they couldn't find joy in any kind of way. This is why mental health went through the roof, because people had money, fame, and wealth, and no joy and no fulfillment. They had no outlet where they can identify that brought them light. And all of us know in business, in leadership, and as influencers, we can all pause for just a second and think about, unfortunately, what's the result when you don't find joy. This is when you find very successful prominent leaders who are caught in hotel rooms with needles and drugs in their arms, and prostitutes and all kinds of other very risque behaviors, because they're all trying to find some sort of fulfillment. So, Genae, in answering your question, while I don't believe that business has to be passionate, I do believe that ultimately find joy in why you do it as another key to success. So that's key number 2. One is to do your due diligence and research, and 2, ultimately to find your joy.
Those are really good points, Michelle, to those 2 points, and it feels like it brings to. I'm going through some of our framework to help people get started and sustain their business, but I think that it might be a good point to talk a little bit about, in entrepreneurship, you can be, especially in the beginning.
Genae, you are fading away. I don't know whether you are far from your microphone.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I am not making any changes. Let me just turn the volume up.
No, we
Is
can
that
hear
better?
you clearly now. We can
Is
hear
that
you.
better? Okay, good. I just turned the volume up. Thank you. But your 2 points for for budding entrepreneurs or people who might be in it right now and need to stay encouraged, or someone who's on the line considering they want to start a business, or those who might be in the operation 5-10 years in and they're constantly in the operation or above. It in your last point, you talked about how you may pursue something, and sometimes you can end up on the other side of it in a way that's not favorable. So let's just talk a little bit about wellness, health and wellness, and making sure that you stay as well as you can throughout the process. We know that in the beginning, you can be in for many years. You can be the chief cook and bottle washer, if you will, that term of, just being all hands on deck for everything in your business until you're able to scale up and become a little more profitable and have access to capital. You're doing a lot of it. You're not only the talent and the knowledge person or the person building a product or service, but you're also the administrator, you're the COO, you're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're all things. So how do you manage wellness in those beginning periods until things become a little more profitable and you can have a little more help built into your structure?
Genae, can you hear me?
I hear you.
It's vital. It's vital that while you are out here building your next empire, that you not forget that you are important. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made in building my business was that I threw my personal self in the trash. Like, I no longer let myself be important as a human because it was all about the business. And so what does that look like? When you are so focused and visionary, and with all faith and belief that you're going to build a business and build an organization, you literally give it everything you got, the same way you would give to a child. You give it all your money, You give it your savings, you give it your creativity, you emphatically will give it your time. And so, in that, sometimes some of us, like myself, will make the human, right, will make the person who is running the business insignificant. And so I'd imagine that a parent sometimes says, well, my child wants these sneakers, or my child wants this some food, or my child wants to go on this adventure. Let me sacrifice what I want to do for me so that my child can be fulfilled and sustained. That is the same decisions that you will make with the business, which is okay sometime. But if you make the mistake that I made, I completely sacrifice myself to complete devastation for the vision of the business. Now, let me ask you all, how can a person run a successful business if the owner and the leader no longer sees themselves as a value?
Mm.
It is hmm?
You're not really going to get far like that.
You won't get anywhere because the leader has to be healthy to run the business.
Absolutely.
The leader has to have a healthy credit score. The leader and the owner has to have a healthy bank account. The leader and the owner has to remember to get checkups and dental support. Why? Because if none of those things are maintained, you cannot fully be available to run this entity that requires so much support. And so in real time, what does that look like? If the owner has poor credit and no money in the bank, you can't give the bank good enough credit and funding to get started. Right? It's a circus wheel of pros and cons that are not working out for each other. If the owner is so stressed out and overwhelmed with, I gotta run the business, I gotta lead the business, or the business needs me, I gotta show up for the business, guess what that leads to? That leads to disease and sickness and poor mental health. Now you're drive you to the brink of insanity. And so to everyone listening to this, or if you know a family member or a cousin or a child, and you see them running down this path, I did that. And I'm here to tell you that this person needs an intervention, and play this part of the tape for them to remind them that you are important too. And you don't have to throw yourself away for the sake of the vision. Find your wellness, get a coach, be prayerful, meditate, take walks, and find something that, once again, that brings you joy.
It's so
We
good.
can relate very much to you, Michelle. That is spot on. And I can see colleagues in the chat box also agree that this is spot on. I guess we all grappling with the how. And I know Rapula has been wanting to come in between them. But this is such a very important point from a coaching point of view. I don't know what Rapula wants to add to that. And I see Coach Dolores has made the remark there. You always have to be conscious and know your value. I like that. Welcome to Administrate when running a business. That's Dolores. Do you want to hear from Rapula and then your views on this? Just what I just said, that from a coaching point of view, that seemed to be the real issue for entrepreneurs.
Oh, Rapula, please.
Yes, my question, can you hear me, guys?
It's
You're a bit far, Rapula.
I think I'm very close. That's why I'm asking, can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Very far.
It's faint, but we'll try to. I'll repeat what I can hear. So why don't you go ahead if it still sounds faint.
All right. My question is to say, as an entrepreneur, there's two things I pick up from Michelle. One was to say, irrespective of the circumstances, you can become an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter whether you come from a white community or a black community, as long as you're mentally fit enough to be an entrepreneur. That's what I pick up from her. The question I'm asking is, can you hear me?
Yes.
The clarification I need to find out is an entrepreneur identify opportunity and make sure that he or she specializes that opportunity. Now, where does R&D pitch in terms of identify that opportunity and make sure that you kicks in? Because in some instances where she mentioned an example of the Asian community, they've identified the opportunity and make sure they excel in the opportunity.
It just got okay. Rapula? Okay, for a second it went out there, but I'm hearing you. You were referring to research and development, the R&D.
Genae, you're fading out. Just put the phone back up.
Okay, Can you
Yes.
hear me? Okay, and Rapula's still speaking, so I was just trying to paraphrase a bit of what I heard. But Rapula, you were talking about research and development. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was saying as an entrepreneur, you identify an opportunity, and once you identify the opportunity, maximize that identification. So what I wanted to find out from Michelle is if I've identified an opportunity to come and do laundry in any suburb in America, and I realized that Americans are lazy to clean their clothes. So it's an opportunity I've identified. Do I need to go and do a research to do a research and development to make sure that that opportunity is sustainable? That's a question I wanted to find out clarification around that aspect. Thank you.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, and please redirect me if I didn't answer your question. Even though you know a thing, like, okay, yeah, I've been hanging around with some Americans. I have been looking at the news, and that looks like an area that they don't enjoy doing themselves. So let me just go ahead and do it, right? The research and development comes into, but wait, where exactly are they, right? So, and some of the questions that you ask yourself in research and development is territories. So, for example, we have a territory here in Pennsylvania that's called Philadelphia, where it's 19150, right? That's the 5-digit code that we use to identify a particular section in the city. This area is based off of citizens that have a median that has an income of somewhere likely between $50,000 and $150,000 a year. That is important as an important aspect in your research and development, because even though Americans all over the country, especially in urban cities, don't necessarily enjoy washing their clothes, you have to first be thoughtful of, but if I open up and invest this business, can this particular area of people afford to pay me to wash their clothes, right? Because you can have a good idea and have a good opportunity, but you've addressed the wrong community. So in an environment where, let's say, we're literally talking about washing clothes, you have to then the person who's doing this business has to be thoughtful and say to themselves, but does this community have jobs? Do they have consistent income? Do they have money? Do they believe in something called disposable income? Are they willing to literally lose $50 every 2 weeks to have me wash their clothes? Can they afford that? You probably, if they have a middle income of $50,000 to $150,000 a year, that community is likely one of that you should consider. But then we've got another community that's called 19132. That income for that community is less. It's zero, maybe to $80,000. They also have the same emotional feeling of not wanting to maybe wash clothes, but their income is dependent maybe on government assistance. Their income is dependent on family or child support. And so you might want to be thoughtful about, maybe my price has to be different in this community than it does in the 19150. And these are things that you can only find out, you can only discover if you do your research, if you begin to get into the communities and find out how they're spending their money, what does their credit look like, what does their lifestyle look like. I know I took the long route on the answer, but I wanted to just give you something that I thought would be helpful.
Oh, that's great to help people understand what it sounds like. What we're hearing you say is to be knowledgeable about the area, the demographics of the area, income in a particular area, maybe what the needs are in that area. So those are some of the components that will go into research and development.
I couldn't hear the last piece.
Those are some of the components that go into research and development, understanding the demographics in the area, what sort of needs are in the area, what sort of businesses might be fruitful or good for that area to have, and maybe probably building cost or service cost for you to operate out of that area might be some of the components that would be used for research and development.
Right. Yeah. Well said. I mean, there's so many aspects, but knowing. So let me just make it real simple for this one particular question. One piece of research and development is knowing the income of the community and being clear about what their disposable income might be and what they're willing to spend it on.
That's good.
Am I right to say that some of this information could be available already, and one must research where to find it, right?
Yeah, this information is emphatically available online. It's public information. I couldn't possibly begin to get into specific links as to where you can go, but there are different bureaus and agencies. Certainly, the IRS has information. Your libraries have informations. Universities and schools have data and information. And Google is a really great place, and YouTube, to find general information. Schools, libraries, bureaus, and the government, they all have sites that tell you about statistics and how and where consumers invest or spend their money.
You said something very fundamental, saying that you need to know the levels of income. And then you said disposable income. And then lastly, what I like, you say as to whether they are willing to spend it on this service or what else are they wanting to spend their money on. I guess that becomes really the real information, because they might have a disposable income, but they may not be comfortable. They may enjoy parting ways with it, and therefore feel like I don't know, if they don't get you to wash their clothing in this case, I don't know how else they get clean. But I'm just saying that it's not as simple as one may think, right?
I'm so glad that you asked to emphasize that point. That is such a really important point, because just because a person has a dollar does not mean that they're willing to share it with that particular entrepreneur. And I have seen really great businesses fail, not because the product was bad, not because the service was bad. They knocked on the door of the wrong customer. Does anybody here like pizza? Does anybody like pizza?
Sure.
Can you ask them in the chat? Tell us if anybody out there where you are. Does anybody eat pizza where you are, Sam?
Yeah,
Okay.
we love it.
Okay, right. Now, if you make the greatest pizza in the world, like this is the most delicious, cheesy, saucy, oh man, like just get in your mind right now, the best sliced pizza that you've ever had on the planet, right? But you go down to a street of people who are vegetarians, and their snack time of choice are apples. And you ask these people, would you buy my pizza? And they say, Genae, get out of here. That is disgusting. How dare you ask me to buy pizza, you pig? You awful person, right? And you're thinking, man, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe pizza is a really bad idea. What was I thinking? God, you're a liar. You told me to go start this business. God told me to start this pizza business, and everybody tells me I'm a pig and I'm horrible for starting it. Without doing the research, you would think you did a bad thing. You knocked on the door of people who don't even eat it or like it because they like apples. That's what research and development tells you. It tells you not only what you do is a viable and a necessary tool that people may buy from, but where exactly are those people? That's important. And then sometimes you create something that there's no demand for. There was no demand for an iPhone. People were still doing something called a flip phone with a BlackBerry. Who wanted a phone that you couldn't see? You couldn't even touch buttons on it. Who wanted that? No one wanted that. But through very generous, clever marketing and a lot of visuals and a lot of initial funding, they were able to convince the world that you needed to throw away your BlackBerry and get this device that you couldn't even feel the buttons on because it was so much better. There was a huge investment to do that. And sometimes entrepreneurs, we don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions and millions of dollars to redirect the mindset of our consumers. So that's a part of why research and development is so critical. Really,
But I
really
also
salient
hear
point.
you saying that you also have to look at the possibility of you emotionally creating the demand for that product.
Yes, sir.
If people don't know that they need it, you can make them. I work for Motorola, and I remember very well when that flat phone came. People just loved the fact that it fitted in the pocket of their jeans.
That's right.
And because of the advert that was done showing how slim, it's so slim that it fits in the pocket of your jean. And everybody wanted to have their phones. I don't know what they call it. It was a slim phone that fits in your pocket of your jean. And that was the selling point.
That's right. That's right. They made it practical for them, right? That reminds me, Sam and Genae, of another case study. I was told that a company that sold hot pretzels wanted to move into, I believe it was China. I know it was an Asian, a part of the Asian continent, but I think it was China. This particular hot butter pretzel did really, really well in the United States. It was absolutely delicious here in the United States. People of all cultures and backgrounds ate it, including Asians, blacks, whites, Latinos. All people were eating this delicious hot pretzel. So an American Asian went to the continent of China, and again, I'm not sure exactly what country, and started this pretzel business. And it failed tremendously. And no one could understand. People eat this pretzel. Why did it not make it at that time in that particular country? And it was for a little tiny fact that no one saw. At the time, people in that part of the country did not want to touch their food. They were accustomed to eating food with sticks. You can't eat a hot pretzel with a an eating stick. You have to break it. So someone said, well, they eat McDonald's out there, so why wouldn't they eat this hot pretzel? So they were showing that the people who ate McDonald's in this part of that country kept the paper on the burger, so they still never touched the food. because it was against their particular practice or culture. Mind blowing. After millions of dollars were lost.
Culture has to be a part of what is done in research and development to understand cultural norms in the place of business you're going to be, and that could shift from providence to providence, neighborhood to neighborhood, city to city, or country to country. That's a really good point to remember in research and development, that cultural norms, how people eat things or how people engage with things is a part of the process, and what will work geographically in one area may not work in another.
Sam, were you getting ready to say something?
No, there is a point that was raised earlier on. I wanted to bring it to your attention when we were talking about transitioning from corporate to become entrepreneur. Around that time, I think Chuma made a comment. He said that that's why others are happy at being CEOs rather than becoming business owners, because they've seen business owners unable to balance life and business. I just thought I should just bring that back, because I think he had quite an interesting point there. That it's a choice to become an entrepreneur. And those who decide to be executives, it's not that they don't want to be entrepreneur, they can't become entrepreneur. It's really because they rather want to have a balanced life with business. I don't know whether that suggests that when you're an executive, you don't have that stress that we have as entrepreneurs, but it's relative, right?
Genae, why don't you answer first, because you're a thriving entrepreneur as well.
Okay, thank you. I would just say to that, yes, there are a lot of people, and I see that in the chat about making sure that other people are happy being CEOs rather than becoming business owners. Some people are really, really good. I remember having a conversation with someone when I was working in an organization, and we were having a conversation about thinking outside of the box and being entrepreneurial. And I remember her response when she said, I'm thinking out. I love that people keep talking about thinking outside of the box, but I really enjoy being inside of the box. It feels really safe for me. I know what I'm supposed to do every day. All of the instructions and things are laid out. I don't necessarily want to be outside of the box. While everybody thinks it's great out there, not for me. And I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I know a lot of people who use that term, being an entrepreneur. So having that spirit and passion of wanting to be able to help and wanting to run a business, but wanting to do it with a company that may be already established. They might be great at being the head of a company that's already established. They may have spent 10, 15, 20 years already in an organization, and they get to a point where they could decide they might be an entrepreneur and step out, or they want to stay inside of an organization. It feels familiar and they want to lead in that way. So you can be an entrepreneur, but be inside of an organization and still lead with an entrepreneur's heart and spirit. And feel like, you own the business, even if it may not be your business. It may be, a global Fortune 500 company. It could be a regional company in your country that you enjoy and have enjoyed the products in, or you work for. You could definitely have that entrepreneurial spirit and be an entrepreneur. And, that this journey is not necessarily for everyone, but you can do it in a different way, being a CEO or being an executive or a leader or manager inside of a company, for sure.
Can you hear me?
What are you missing, Genae, since you left corporate and became entrepreneur? About corporate?
It's funny you should ask, because a lot of my work lately, especially, has been around helping with organizations. I really enjoy corporate work. I really enjoy working for organizations and supporting teams. I like working in different industries and in different types of cultures and companies. So I miss the camaraderie of working with other people and established teams. I really enjoy when a team is pointed and they know what they want to accomplish and what they want to do, and they just need an extra set of hands. They need someone to help them with their project. They may not need a full-time person, but they need someone for, a couple of years or a couple of months to accomplish something or get something done. So I miss that aspect, and that's why I still stay connected in that kind of work. I like supporting organizations and teams. I think it's something about the camaraderie of being at the table with folks and being involved in helping them achieve something. And I might not be able to do that or not want to do that as a full-time employee rather, but I'm able to still do that and participate in a company that's doing a change management effort or doing a team intervention or improving culture. And I'm able to help them out. I can help them as a consultant by providing information or insights and intervention, or being able to help them as a contractor and actually being involved in helping them out. So I miss those aspects, but I still get to play in those aspects, if you will. So I'm not too far away from it. I just structure how I work with organizations differently from being a full-time employee.
I like to continue to stir the momentum on that. I mean, Genae, first of all, I just appreciate the transparency, because sometimes people are not courageous enough to say, even though I don't regret my decision of leading my own organization, there are some cool benefits that I no longer experience, like the camaraderie and the access to trending information and resources. So with that, let me say back to the people who are getting ready to start, is that there is a skill that is often not discussed when you begin this journey. This other secret skill is your ability to be self-guided. Your ability to be self-guided, there's no room for it to be compromised, and there's no room for you to wait for that to happen. Once you open up a business, once you say yes, once you sign the dotted line and you go on record with your government, with your state, with your country, that you have opened up a legal entity, you are responsible for that. Once you decide that I will go on paper and say, I am responsible for everything concerning this business, your skills in being self-guided are critical. So what does that mean in real time? Some of the pitfalls that business owners fall into is the trap of loneliness. The trap of loneliness, it never ends. You're always different from a lot of the people around you because you are creating something from scratch that you have to lead. The way that you perceive money, the way that you perceive assets and people, the way that you even perceive time is going to be extraordinarily different from a lot of the people that you engage with on a daily basis. Your friends or your colleagues or your loved ones that say, well, sleep late. Why don't you just come over and have some fun with this? Take off for the weekend. It's Sunday. Why are you still working? Well, why don't you just go ahead and get those shoes? You only live once. And on your self-guided path, you have to have the courage and the wherewithal to say no with love and confidence. Like, I know you don't get it, but I'm building something. So sitting on the phone and talking to you an hour about who won the championship or who was on the TV show, or gossip about the neighbors who's sleeping with the other neighbors. That's all sensational conversation that may be fun to do, but it doesn't add value to where I am now. I know I can sleep late. I'm the boss. I can sleep late every day that I want. But sleeping late, even on Sundays, doesn't give me the capacity to get to where I need to go.
So, Genae, in answering this question, being self-guided and self-disciplined is absolutely key. Michelle and Sam, Michelle, what you just said right there, you know, I know we're coming down to the last, few minutes, but we could probably have a conversation that would go on about it. And I think it's really important for those who are currently thinking about it, starting on their journey or in their journey, to realize what Michelle has said is such a key part of the journey. That's why conversations like this over COMETSA Podcast Network and being focused on the Global Entrepreneur Week or entrepreneurial services online or within your country is so important, because you really need to be around people who are like-minded. There are a lot of people, there may not be a lot of peers that you have on your journey, and they do perceive those things differently, as Michelle said. And what could come with that is, you are kind of the eyeball out as an entrepreneur. Your day looks different. Your money looks different for a while. So, there might be the enticing of people are hearing that you're working towards it. And even if they see results and if they do it for a little while, do not be surprised by the person who says, you know what? There's this job that's open at so and so and so. Why don't you think about, why don't, like, people will maybe, a job opportunity may come along or something else may come along. If you're not working in a team, if you're working differently than colleagues who work in an organization, you work from remote, you work at a different place, you work from home. People may not perceive that in the same way as being in an office. So you have to be cautious of those things, as Michelle said. I think that's a really important point to say, because when you're starting out and you're doing it, if you're not in groups that are entrepreneur groups, you can feel a little bit different. And, you have to stay the course and be self-directed on this journey, for sure.
So profound. Coach George is not able to put something in the chat box, so we still want to check what the problem is. He just shared with me something on the WhatsApp and saying that as an entrepreneur, everything about you is different. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts guide you differently. And I think that speaks to the point that was also raised by Genae Young. He says that having transition, I think he talks about himself now, having made the transition from corporate executive technology in banking to business owner, the transformation took over 5 years.
Right.
The mindset shift and life change is using a word here I'm trying to read, cataclysmic. Oh, yes. I hope you get that. It sounds like it's dramatic, something like that. Yeah. So, and then Rapula says that entrepreneurship is a lonely journey. Mm-hmm. It requires patience, persistent, etc., to achieve focused product offering. And again, Andre comes and says, the connection with industry professionals in multiple organizations being the biggest bonus. Social engagement and learning from people across the globe who are thought leaders in the different disciplines is the reward. However, building the networking skills took a lot of practice and failure. I think you have touched a nerve here.
There are a lot of comments in the chat for sure.
We all can relate to this. I'm smiling and laughing. I come across that question a lot. Do you ever rest? That's the question I get asked. Because they don't see you resting at the time when they rest.
Right. Well, that rest question and sleep question, it's a big deal here in the United States. I don't know how other countries and cultures see it, but there is a war around what sleep and rest mean here in our country. A few years ago, before the pandemic, the big cultural term was sleep is for suckers. Right. Sleep when you are dead, right? Right.
And this is something that the millennial generation championed. They felt like if you were asleep, you were lazy or slothful, or you weren't really serious about your business. So this is a generation that learned how to stay up 2 and 3 days at a time, just working on their business and business goals year round. Because of course, who wants to be identified as a sucker? So let me work even through bad health. Let me work. And I can understand the passion behind that, because our hours as business owners are very different from people who work typical jobs. The challenge is that when you don't find time to sleep and to rest, you hurt your physical body, mainly your brain. And so, as leaders, your time for rest and sleep has to be thoughtful. It has to be thoughtful, and it has to be planned. You have to set aside time, like I'm going to go to bed at a certain time, I'm going to wake up at a certain time, I'm going to nap on a certain time. And ultimately, let me share this with everyone, no matter where you are in your country, in your world, I should say, no matter where you are in the world, the one thing that all business owners and super leaders have to keep in mind is planned vacation. Once again, I am one of those people who did not take this advice and work myself into the ground, not planning time off. We work differently and more intensely as entrepreneurs. Therefore, we have to plan our playtime. And the reason why playtime and vacation is very important to business owners, entrepreneurs, super leaders is because just like the ground has to rest before it can reproduce fruit, right? Just like a piece of chicken, when you cook it, has to rest before you cut it, or a great piece of dessert after it comes out of the oven, it has to rest before you serve it. That goes back to your mind, into your body, into your soul. After working and churning out so much service, after working and churning out so much service, your body must rejuvenate itself and heal from super producing. And playtime, rest, and vacation gives you that place to do that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Genae, I just want to warn you that in 3 minutes' time, the
Yes.
platform is going to cut you off.
Yes.
But I wanted to finish by saying this from my side. It does look like this entrepreneurship in Indaba is what we need most, because we are talking to ourselves, some of us who are entrepreneurs, and it looks like maybe this is a place we belong to each other to talk about our frustrations. And so because we understand each other, I don't think anybody else who's not an entrepreneur will understand what we're talking about. Is this something that you think entrepreneurs fail to do, not being together with each on their this journey?
I definitely think so. I think we do have to stick together, share resources and information and encouragement. Michelle's groups are great for that. I mean, Michelle, in her group, she has a VIP group. She has a group of entrepreneurs and shares resources, information, and encouragement. She's definitely the person that I go to, and I'm like, it was a rough time with my contract, I'm I just need to talk. She makes time for it. Folks that I've met through her network and other folks through COMETSA and other networks, you definitely need to have a community of folks. It's really helpful. It's really, really helpful to have that. And I know we're winding down with like one more minute. And Michelle, I want to throw this out to you with one more minute because our platform will cut off. But what do you need to say that you would be remiss to say if you didn't have a minute to say it?
Well, I do want you all to remember to connect with me at growwithsnow.com. If someone can put that in the chat for me, growwithsnow.com. We spend a lot of time today on great nuggets. I will ultimately say, and my last bit of advice, don't forget to be that living epistle. If God gave it to you in your heart, He will help you to manifest it in your hand.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your time today, Michelle. Thank you, Sam, for hosting us on COMETSA. I'm Genae Young, and you can find me at www.oneextraordinary.com. Thank you to everyone who contributed to the chat and listening, and look forward to talking to you the next time. Thank you for listening on the COMETSA Podcast Network. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That was our episode at COMETSA Radio Worldwide Podcast. My name is Sam Zima, your moderator, facilitator, and executive coach. I invite you to subscribe and follow us at COMETSARadioPodcast.com or any of your favorite podcast platforms and receive notifications when we go live or publish new episodes. To become our member and enjoy the benefits associated with that membership, you may apply online at www.cometsaclub.africa. The other services of COMETSA may be accessed at www.cometsa-goc.com, or you may write to us at callcenter@cometsa-goc.com. Call center is spelled CALLCENTRE, and it is call center at comesa-goc.com. You are welcome to give us a call during working hours, Monday to Friday, at telephone number +27 11974 5612. We are available on all social media platforms. Take care, be safe, and goodbye.